Stu Bennett, aka Wade Barrett.
Aka, Bad News Barrett, King Barrett, Stu Sanders, Lawrence Knight, and The Pinnacle.
You've had quite a few names in your
Yeah,
wrestling
some
career.
better than others. I actually really liked The Pinnacle. I was going to be the next Rock, but it didn't quite work out like that.
Well, nearly.
I think The Pinnacle is like The Rock, it's just a little bit better. It's the top of The Rock, you know.
Yeah,
That was my
exactly. It's
thinking.
better than The Rock.
That was my thinking as a 21-year-old or whatever I was when I came up with that. But there we go. Quickly, that one got squashed and I had to change.
I think maybe you go back to wrestling, you form a tag team with The Rock. The
Okay.
Rock and The Pinnacle. What would that tag team be called, though?
I don't know. Probably the good wrestler and the crappy wrestler. I don't know. Something like that.
I can't think who you're referring to when you say that.
I would be the crappy one. Let's get that one clear.
Oh,
He was
okay.
slightly more successful than me.
But in ring, you
Yeah,
got
I'm
it down. You got it down.
Maybe.
So here we are in the middle of absolutely nowhere. We're on the set of your new film, Vengeance.
Yes.
Talk me through everything to do with this new film.
Yeah, this was a real cool opportunity for me once I left WWE. Obviously, over the last few years, I've had a couple of opportunities through WWE studios to do some movie work, which I've really enjoyed. But this was an opportunity completely outside of WWE for me to do something creative and exciting again, and I grabbed it with both hands. So Vengeance is a story about a guy who's an ex-SAS army guy, and his John Gold is the character, played by me, and he comes back to this town he used to live and to find it's been taken over by a drug-running gang of soldiers who have basically murdered his best friend. So he comes back to kind of clean the town up and seek vengeance for the death of his best friend. So that's me coming in and driving a beautiful car like that and beating people up, firing guns, running around and having a lot of fun.
That's sort of the dream job, right?
Exactly. I mean, I can't believe I've kind of landed in this spot after all I've done with WWE. It's pretty amazing to get an opportunity like this, and it sounds cool, but the coolest thing for me is to get to work with some of the people I'm getting to work with, not only on camera but also behind the scenes, because I'm working with guys like Gary Daniels, who's a British action film legend. Brian
Expendables,
Larkin,
right? Was he
he's been in
British guy in that?
Expendables.
Yeah.
He's been in over 50 movies, and he's really well known in kind of the martial arts movie world. He's worked with Jackie Chan before, and especially if you go to the Asian countries, he's a huge star out there, especially because they love all that kind of kung fu and that sort of stuff. So to get to work with him and some of the other actors on set has been amazing, a good chance for me to learn from them. And also the guys working in, behind the scenes of the art department, and the camera guys, the directors, the producers, they've really come together to produce what I think is an excellent film. And we've got about 4 days left of shooting now, and I'm going to be very sad when I leave, not just because I'm leaving this car behind, but
it is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I've tried to look into shipping it over to Tampa, Florida with me, but the art department who own it are kind of a little upset with me trying that.
That's fair enough. And so talk to me about the transition. You obviously left WWE. When did you leave in the end? Because your contract was up in June, right? And then you left a little bit early, is that right?
So the contract I signed after winning NXT in 2010 ran until June 2016. After WrestleMania this year, it was pretty obvious that they weren't going to do anything significant with me, and I mean, really, it was just waiting for that time. They knew I was leaving. I told them I was off. So at that point, it was like, look, we could just send you down to the ring every night and have you lose in 3 minutes, which is, to be honest with you, kind of what I did for most of my last year anyway. Or we could just say, let's knock it on the head. You go one way, we'll go the other, and perhaps we'll meet down the road. So.
Although you mentioned WrestleMania, you were in there with Shawn Michaels and
I
Steve Austin.
I was very disappointed with WrestleMania at first because it was built up as a 4-on-3 matchup, and I kind of knew that obviously the creative team at that point were not going to invest in me at all because I was off, but I was certainly excited to be performing in my final WrestleMania, getting in the ring with New Day and just doing a little something and almost giving it a bit of a goodbye to the WWE fans. So when I was told the day before that we're changing this, it's now going to be a 3-on-3 match and you're going to be stumbling outside, I was pretty disappointed.
Yeah.
But then at the last minute, the day of, Vince came up with this plan that we'd have the legends involved and they come down and beat us bad guys up. And I came up with some ideas when we were putting that together. Hey, why don't we just do it like this? These guys can fight you and then throw me at the end and hit all the finishes. So that was a pretty cool goodbye, and those were all 3 guys that I looked up to a lot as a kid and still look up to today. So it was cool to have that moment with them.
And that moment was planned the day of?
Pretty much day off,
That's
probably
remarkable
before.
to me.
Yeah, we had no idea we were going to do it. So I mean, in terms of the match, they kind of planned that out a little in advance, maybe the day or two before, because it's WrestleMania. They put a bit more planning into things. But yeah, we had no idea what was going to go on at the end, and I think probably an hour before WrestleMania went live, we were told, okay, at the end, these 3 are going to come out. I think Vince might have known about it a bit in advance, but didn't want to spoil the secret or get it leaked out or anything like that. So we found out very, very much an hour before we went live and had a quick chat with them, suggested a couple of ideas. They tweaked here and there, and that's what we get.
Wow.
Stu getting his ass kicked again.
And so to that point, you getting beaten in 3 minutes, that kind of thing. Because fans online, these dirt sheets, are very quick to kind of go, oh, he's been buried. The creative isn't utilising him as well as they should do. Was that a big part of you leaving? Is that why the decision came about, or were you just tired of being on the road? Like, what was the kind of the final decision?
It was really a combination of things, and I'd say 2015 and 2016 throughout were miserable experiences for me as a performer. The losing in 3 minutes thing is never a problem as long as there are other things involved. But if you're just a human punch bag going to the ring to get beat by every babyface or good guy, as we should say, if you're just going out there as a human punch bag, it's just a miserable experience. Right. It's not why I got into wrestling. You know, I've never complained about someone beating me, whether it's the bottom guy on the roster or the top guy, and I've lost them all. But so that wasn't in itself the problem. The problem for me was that wrestling and the reasons I got into wrestling were more than just the bell-to-bell stuff. It's not just about going in there and doing moves and leaving. It's about developing characters and storylines and, you know, promo work and really the stuff that got excited me as a kid. You know, the things I remember from watching wrestling as a kid was the storylines and the emotions that it brought out in me. So to be reduced to a guy who just walks down to get beat every night was very dissatisfying for me, and that was probably the biggest reason why I decided it was time to move on. I wasn't happy with that creative. So. And
the big question, obviously, are you ever going to go back?
Yeah, well, I would never rule it out. I'm certainly not retired from wrestling. The good thing about wrestling now versus when I joined WWE in 2007 is that globally, outside of WWE, there's a lot of great things going on. I think most people are aware of New Japan these days. That's pretty huge, and they've done some amazing stuff with Bullet Club and those kind of things over the last few years. Across the US, there's a lot of good indies going on, and especially here in the UK, there's an amazing scene going on at the moment, some great companies, and I've been in touch with a few of them. I had chats, and they've sounded me out about possibly doing some stuff in the future. I would never rule out going back to WWE. The prospect of going back as a full-time wrestler on that kind of schedule and working with the creative team again doesn't fill me with joy right now. So if I did go back there, possibly not as a wrestler, possibly something like commentary might suit me a bit better, or behind the scenes or something like that. So I would, like I say, I wouldn't rule it out, but I'm certainly not planning anytime soon to get back in the ring with WWE.
And so you left just after Mania. At that point, did you know anything about the brand split? Like, was that frustrating leaving and then looking back and thinking, oh, I might have had more of a spotlight on SmackDown, perhaps? Was it kind of an annoying time to leave?
Not really. I mean, it was kind of an open secret in the locker room that the brand split was happening. We probably knew about it around December, something like that. So I wasn't surprised at all when it came out. I knew it was coming. Yeah. It didn't give me enough faith that suddenly we have this split and now the creative team are going to start writing really good things for me that I can get inspired by and feel proud of. I didn't feel that change was going to have any impact at all. I still felt that they're going to be focusing on either the older guys like, I say older guys, the guys who've been around a long time, like the Cenas, the Randys and the top guys who are already in those spots, and then they're going to be focusing on guys who are Triple H guys who've come through the NXT system, like the Shield or the Wyatts or whoever else they're focusing on at this moment in time, this debut. So I felt that I was in that kind of blind spot almost, where I don't have anybody pulling for me in the meetings. I'm not a reflection of anybody else in those management meetings, which is essentially, it's a political game, and everybody who is pulling for somebody wants to do so because it's a reflection of them, and they kind of, it's really something that nobody can say I was a reflection of them anymore, because the people who kind of put me into that position have all moved on or moved into different roles now. So I knew I was always going to be up against it at this point, and that was, after being so unhappy in 2015 and 2016, the prospect of 3 more years of that filled me with dread. So that's why I didn't sign the contract that was offered.
And you're really busy with this film at the moment. Are you still watching the product? Because am I wrong in saying when you're in the bubble of WWE, when you leave it, it must be quite a weird feeling not being part of that circle
Yeah.
every single week, not being with the guys? Do you miss it? Are you still watching what's going on TV?
I will be honest here, and this isn't to be critical of WWE, I haven't watched a second of their programming since I left, and I haven't had a single moment where I've regretted leaving either. So it's probably been about 4 months now since I left, and I've been happier in the last 4 months than I have been for years prior to that. So I feel like I made the right decision. I still think they make great TV, and I'm sure at some point I will go back and start watching it again and, keeping tabs on what's going on there. But part of the reason I left is that I wasn't happy wrestling. I wasn't happy being involved in it. And so to be involved in it and not be happy, the last thing I want to do is go home and start watching it too, because I wasn't inspired by what was going on there. And eventually, like I say, I'll get back watching it again at some point. But right now, I just wanted a clean break from wrestling. I've not really done any wrestling interviews either. I've kind of stayed away from that and, focused on other things and just enjoyed living my life again for a little while.
And so how did the transition happen into movies? Because I'm imagining it's not that easy to break into films. But also WWE is a great training. I think it was Chris Jericho. He said WWE will prepare you for any kind of form of entertainment, whether it's, acting or... So you must have had great training in WWE.
I agree. I've got a lot to thank WWE for in terms of preparing me for movies. So obviously guys have gone before me like The Rock and Adam Copeland, who was Edge, and Batista have done fantastic stuff since they've moved into this world. So I do think it is a natural progression in terms of, you're performing characters on TV and lines and, memorizing your lines and all that stuff and entertaining, basically.
Yeah.
And, especially in this kind of movie that I'm doing, there's a lot of simulated fighting, which I'm a natural for. So there's definitely some great training I have there, but also the fact that I'm coping with pressure and having to hit deadlines and having to perform when the red light's on the camera and stuff like that. So I think it is a great training scheme really to go into movies if people are interested in doing that, and I've got a lot to thank them for there. It's been pretty good, but also I would say there's also a convincing side. You have to convince casting directors and people working on projects that, hey, look, I am a wrestler. This is what I'm known for. But if you think about it, wrestling isn't like boxing or other sports disciplines where, okay, well, you're good at that. We're actually acting pretty much the whole time. Even though we're simulating fighting and stuff, the whole thing is an act. So we are performing and entertaining people in that. So it takes a bit of convincing, and hopefully, when I get opportunities like the one I've got here at Vengeance, and hopefully I do a good job on it, I think I have done, that will then be used as a vehicle to hopefully get other opportunities and that sort of stuff too. And
have you got a stuntman in this film, or are you doing your own stunts?
Come on, I do my own stunts. Yeah,
every one of them?
Sometimes every single one. I do not have a stuntman. Part of the problem is it's hard to find anyone with my height and dimensions. So maybe
and
if
the
I
nose
get,
as well,
exactly, the nose. You might need some prosthetic work to get somebody with one of those. But I'm doing all my own stunts in this. Actually, I did a movie last year called Eliminators that's coming out pretty soon. That was with WWE, and they hired a stuntman for that, and they did pretty well. They got a guy who was about this tall, maybe 3 inches shorter than me, and he's a trained stuntman and this, that, and the other. But he ended up taking one stunt for me the whole movie, and I'm doing taking all these landings and stuff like that because I can do them, it's fine. But he ended up doing one stunt, so I think they thought with this one, well, he doesn't really need it. He's kind of doing the kind of things he can do in wrestling, and I was absolutely fine with that. And I think it makes for a better movie the more things I can do myself. It looks better on camera because they haven't got to hide your face or shoot an angle that doesn't expose who's actually doing the landing and stuff. And people are so familiar with my body mechanics and how I move after years of watching me on TV that I think I land the way I land, and it's different to the way Randy Orton lands, and it's different to the way Sheamus lands, and people can tell when I'm landing because they know how I land and how I get up and stuff like that. So as much as I can, I want to do my own stunts.
You mentioned Sheamus. I understand you're very good friends with Sheamus.
Sometimes. He grinds my gears as much as anybody, but I've known him for years for sure.
Well, to that point, we're seeing him this weekend in New York for SummerSlam weekend. Have you got a message for your old mate Sheamus?
Well, I've noticed you're a ginger hair guy. I was going to go with the ginger hair insults, but I'm going to avoid that. I don't know. Just let him know that anytime he's ready to come into the movie world. I know he's done a little bit in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He had a bit of a role in that. Not that I've seen it yet. I intend to watch it at some point, but I've heard good reviews from his performance. But I think me and him can have a good battle on the big screen someday. So certainly anytime he's ready to lock horns with me again. I think my win-loss record with him, I think I've won one ever. and lost 3,000. But in the movie world, I think maybe I'll do a little better. So I'm ready to challenge him on screen sometime.
League of Nations, the movie.
There we go.
Lads,
the meltdown.
the movie.
Cameo from Rusev, cameo from Alberto Del Rio.
It writes itself, doesn't it?
There we go. We can start off having a game of football. We're all big football fans, and it
Yeah.
just breaks down from there. People
We
start
need to
swinging.
write this script.
It's a football hooligan movie. I love it. This is going to be good.
We'll shoot it here. We've got a barn.
Rusev would be awesome in movies. I've got to say that. He's
Yeah.
a really funny guy.
And so talking about the transition to movies, what happens when you leave WWE? You obviously have a huge following, and a wrestling fan base following, but it's huge nonetheless. So are you being offered scripts? Do you have to really kind of knock down doors? Do you have to do lots of castings? How did this movie, Vengeance, come about for you?
Well, I was actually offered this off the back of the movie I was doing last year. The director and the producer saw the work I was doing on that, and they spoke to me, hey, we were impressed with this. And actually the stunt man who I was telling you about, who took one landing from me on that movie, he is friends with the director too, and I think he put in a good word and say, hey, look, this guy's good, you might be able to get him. So that came from word of mouth, but certainly since I've left WWE, I've been offered a few different things in the movie world. It's some things you've got to turn down because they're not quite at the level I want to be working at, or sometimes the script isn't what I'm looking for. And then I put myself forward for other roles too that, it's a competitive world, and there's 100 other guys that want to do the roles that I want to do. So there's been one or two things that I'm forward for at the moment. We're still waiting to hear back on, and we'll just see where that goes. But I'm pretty open-minded about what I want to do in the film world. It's not my only avenue that I'm interested in pursuing at the moment. There's other things outside of entertainment that I'm kind of working on too, quietly.
Okay.
Like I say, it's an exciting world to be a part of. I've been thrilled by my 3 movies I've been a part of so far, and how cool it is to be working with these people that are creative and all pulling in the same direction. And I hope to do more of it in the future. So,
well, presumably now's a really good time because, you mentioned Sheamus, he was in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like, Batista was in a bloody James Bond film. Like, it feels like the world of WWE, and obviously Cena and The Rock, is becoming a lot more mainstream, a lot more kind of credible, if you like. So now's a good time for you to be pursuing, knocking down film doors, right?
Sure. I think a lot of it, like you say, is convincing people. People often have a very archaic view of wrestlers that were boneheaded drug addicts who can't string a sentence together. So hopefully over time the perception of that is changing. I think WWE's product these days highlights wrestlers in a slightly better light, usually anyway, than they did in the past. And part of the job description these days almost in WWE is that you have to be able to communicate well verbally as well as fighting in the ring and stuff like that. So I think that bodes well. I think the success of The Rock, he's the #1 film star in the world. Guess what, guys? He's a pro wrestler first, and he'll always be a pro wrestler first, and he still loves pro wrestling. So that's great. Batista's done incredible since he's moved in there. I don't know how he got his break. I don't know Batista very well, but the stuff he's done is amazing. With was the Marvel movie he was in, the Guardians of the Galaxy, of course, he was in that. And he's got the James Bond role now. Amazing look, and a real nice guy. Whenever I've worked with him before, and I just say Cena's dipping his toe in the ocean now, and I think slowly but surely people are starting to look at wrestlers as, hey, some of these guys can actually make that transition into the film world. They're not just these dummies who hit each other over the head with steel chairs and take steroids and stuff like that. It's very different now, and I think we're slowly changing Hollywood's perception of what a wrestler can do.
And if you had to choose one fellow WWE superstar, present or former, to join you in a film, like a tag team on film, like a buddy cop movie, who would it be? Are we talking Rusev here, or?
Rusev would be awesome. He's just a naturally funny guy. I think he could play a ton of roles. I think the typical Eastern European gangster in a comedy would be great for him. My favourite, I think, would be Neville. I was really close friends with Neville. I was a massive fan of his work from day one, and I actually pitched a ton of ideas. In my final 2 years with WWE, I was constantly pitching ideas to the creative team of stuff I wanted to do, all of which kind of fell on deaf ears, unfortunately, and I was given other stuff. But one of the ideas I had was to come back. I think when I was Bad News Barrett, Neville was kind of just debuting around that time, and I really wanted to work with him, and fans wanted me as a babyface at that point. So one of the ideas I had was to actually have me and Neville as a tag team where I would come down, give my Bad News stuff, and here comes Neville, and we're working together. He's doing his cool flips. The fans are going nuts, and we're this great babyface tag team. And
why didn't they go for
exactly,
that?
It would have been amazing. And eventually, obviously, I'm the nasty guy, so we worked for months and months. We become tag team champions. And eventually, I screw him over and throw him through the barbershop window or whatever it is. But one of the ideas I had,
which he'd flip through.
Yeah,
obviously.
exactly. Land on his feet and beat me up again. So that's how I expect that would go. But one of the ideas I had was actually, I'm obviously a huge British Bulldogs fan, so I kind of wanted to reference that. And with me and Neville both being two northern lads, I thought, well, we can't really be the Bulldogs again. We're not going to walk down with the Bulldog. How's about a whippet on a piece of string? So that was my plan. It would be me and Neville running out in flat caps, two northern lads with a whippet on a piece of string. The crowd would have gone bananas.
They would have done.
But they turned it down and put me in a Toys R Us plastic crown and made me lose to R-Truth every night with a toilet plunger on a pole match or whatever that was. So there we go.
So before this interview, you said you weren't going to badmouth WWE. I think it's the Americans. They just don't understand the humour.
Exactly.
That would have been
and
phenomenal,
our humour is
man.
funny. That's why Bad News Barrett worked. It was a touch of humour in there. Okay, the guy being a nasty guy, but it was a touch of humour. Little touches of humour like the podium and the gavel and little pieces like that.
Listen, you stole the show at Hall of Fame.
Ah, what a fun night that was.
What a pop that was.
Yeah, that was cool. It was, I think, there was a ton of Brits in the crowd that night too.
Yeah.
That was an awesome experience for me because Bad News Barrett was going well up until that point, but that was the moment that really pushed it over the edge and made it, okay, this is memorable. And I think genuinely, I hate to big myself up, that was, aside from Nexus, the biggest thing I've ever done was Bad News Barrett in the world of wrestling. I think people will be talking about that in 10, 15 years' time, and I always think I'll have that chance to burst in and hit the catchphrase on a show randomly when people least expect it. So that might keep me in food for a little while over the rest of my life.
And will you come out one day and say, Happy Valentine's Day, you fat pigs?
Yeah. I don't know if the world knows that story, but that was one of my favourite lines as Bad News Barrett.
One of your edited stories.
I tweeted it. Vince wrote that I had to finish. It was the Happy Valentine's Day version of the Valentine's Day version of SmackDown. I was supposed to come out and give the bad news and say, so Happy Valentine's Day, ladies. So I was basically explaining they were going to all get fat because they were eating chocolates and they were going to die and this, that and the other. So final line was Happy Valentine's Day, ladies. On a whim, I decided while I was on the podium to change it Happy Valentine's Day, you fat pigs, which to me was made it better.
Favourite story
and it was a huge gasp in the audience. Nobody was laughing, and I went down on my podium and kind of walked out of there, and I got back up to the gorilla position, which is where Vince and everybody sits and watches the monitors.
Yep.
Vince is in tears at this point. Everyone's laughing. They replay it for me 3 or 4 times, and I think Vince really wanted to yell at me, but every time he looked at me, he just started laughing again, and I had to record a wild line, so when they aired it on TV, it turned into Happy Valentine's Day, ladies. He thought that was a little too strong for 50% of his audience.
So maybe Vince appreciated your comedy at times.
He definitely loved it, but he's always had his hands tied in that he wants to stay within certain confines. And certain one of the problems is certain people like a Cena or Stone Cold or whoever they're trying to put as the cool guy is allowed to push that boundary, but it only becomes a pushed boundary when one person's doing it, because if everyone's doing it, then it's a new boundary. So he has to be a bit restrictive on who can and can't break the rules. And unfortunately, at that point, I wasn't someone who was allowed to push the envelope as far as I wanted to. And
your relationship with Vince? What's he like to? I mean, did you have much dealings with him? I imagine you didn't speak to him that often, or is that not the case?
I did deal with him. I mean, he's obviously a busy guy, and he is the ultimate hands-on boss. Yeah. Every decision that ever gets made, he's got a part of it, and he's controlling everything. Nothing gets past him. So it is hard to get a lot of FaceTime with him, but generally after every single match or every single promo, you walk through the curtain and there he is sat by the monitor with the earphones. Sometimes he'll just give you a thumbs up. Sometimes he'll take the earphones off and have a chat with you about something. Sometimes he's getting ready to yell at you, which fortunately for me didn't happen too often. But he was always great with me, face to face anyway. He would always treat me with respect, even though there were many times where he made decisions about my character and storylines and how they were going to use me. There were many times I was unhappy with it and didn't like it and felt that he wasn't using me to the best of my abilities. I will say that whenever I dealt with him face to face, he was always great with me, always made time for me. And if I did make suggestions, if he didn't like them, he would tell me why and, hey, we can't do that because of this. So, I feel like I always had a very good relationship with him. I've got no beef with him at all. After leaving there, he's a good man.
well done for using the phrase "no beef."
No beef.
Congratulations on
that. Is that a British term or American
I
term?
don't know. I love saying it.
I'm all over the place with my vocabulary
Yeah,
now, so occasionally stuff comes out and I'm not sure if it's English or Americanisms or
So
what.
you're still living in the US,
Yes.
but you're over here in the UK doing the film. Let's talk to me about this car that you use in Vengeance. It's a beast, right?
Look at this thing. This is a 1968 Pontiac GTO. And what a mean machine. This is actually a legit drag racing car. Lee, who works in the art department of the movie, owns this car. And it's got a 6.5 litre engine in it. When he drag races it, he goes from motionless to a quarter of a mile down the track, and he does that in from a standing start is the word I'm looking for. He does that in 11 seconds. And this thing, I've seen pictures of it when it's starting up and the front raises like a full foot off the ground. And yeah, this is my mean machine for the car, which is slightly out of place on the mean streets of London. But that's what makes it cool. And that's part of what I think is really cool about action movies, is that you get to have this suspended reality and have this cool character. Of course he drives a cool car like this, and of course he's driving a drag racing car. Realistically, if it was me, I'd be driving around in a Ford Sierra with a bit of rust on the side, but this is John Gold, and he drives a mean machine like this. And fortunately it's American, so I whacked the seat right back and I've got some leg room, and you know, it's pretty cool to drive around.
Did you do any stunt driving in this, or
I wish they would?
Like, did you have cameras rigged all over the bonnet? How was it
we had a
working
bunch of cameras put inside. At one point, we had the main cameraman Simon sat in the back filming me, and me looking in the mirrors and getting some really cool artwork and shots of that, and you know, scenes of me kind of buzzing down the road and that sort of stuff. But I mean, it was an absolute pleasure to drive. It runs like a dream, and very lucky that they managed to get this one for me. They did a great job with it.
That's sex on wheels, isn't it?
I love it, man.
And finally, Vengeance. When's it coming out? Is there any release dates yet for the film?
Nothing set in stone. Fingers crossed. I'm guessing it's going to be early 2017. Okay. So I'll definitely keep people updated on all my social media. I'm at Stu Bennett on Twitter, at Stu Bennett Pics on Instagram, and possibly soon I might even be setting up a Snapchat. So that's a whole new world for me.
I can't make head nor tail of Snapchat.
Yeah, Ryback loves it, and he's been on at me to get that set up. So I'm kind of sitting back and trying to figure it out first before I make a fool of myself on there. But yeah, I think it's guaranteed it's going to happen either way. So pretty soon I might set up one of those.
Awesome. Stu Bennett, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes.
Always good to see you, man.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Thanks so much.